you guys hear me? Yes, yes, okay, great. I have some slides here about ATSC 3.0 or NextGen TV, depending on how you slice it. Looking at the faces in this audience, I'm going to guess that many of these slides are things you have seen before, so we might go a little bit off script as we go through these slides. First of all, thank you so much, Peter, for all your organizational efforts. I know that pulling this together, everybody's PowerPoint's coming in late at the last minute, and I sent the wrong one, and oh my goodness, and somehow it all comes together here. So thank you so much for that. I know that's hard work. Okay, so going forward, a little bit about what Lynn talked about. So as he said, this is a non-backward compatible standard. In Korea, they said you shall do it, so it was mandated. In this country, you may do it. So as Lynn said, it had better be that good for this country. So more capacity, and we'll get into that in a minute. Better reception, indoor, mobile, everything. Hybrid OTA and OTT, we're going to make this an IP-based system, and enhance consumer experience, certainly video, audio, accessibility, interactivity, emergency messaging. And then, of course, new business models. You know, Lynn was talking about making sure we have good value for our spectrum. You know, and I think that's true worldwide. Everybody is scrambling for spectrum. You know, the cellular industry is ravenous for spectrum, and the way to defend your spectrum is to use it well. And I think that the ATSC 3.0 standard is going to help broadcasters make their stake in the ground very strongly with, hey, our spectrum is being used extremely wisely for the betterment of the people and the economy. So new business models, including advanced advertising, potentially pay-per-view subscription, perhaps some audience understanding, and data casting, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but may in fact be one of the biggest pieces of this new standard. My favorite slide. You guys all know what this means, but it's really fun to try to explain this to people who have no idea what we're talking about. But to me, the most interesting part is the distance between that green dot, which is A53, and the red dots there on the 15 SNR vertical line there. So there you see, before we've done anything else, we have about a 30% increase in capacity, just if we want to keep the same SNR that we have now. And of course, we're able to work on this entire continuum of low capacity, more robust, all the way up to high capacity and less robust. And what's really fascinating about this is you think about other ways that we can improve our spectrum efficiency or the strength of our signal. One of them is single frequency networks. So if you envision that you're getting a better SNR because you have a single frequency network, you can decide to push more bits, or you can decide to have more robustness. And so you're able to slide around on this continuum. And as most of you in the room know, we get to walk and chew gum at the same time. We can have services, multiple services that are anywhere along this continuum. And in fact, we can have a single service with different parts of it at different points along here. For example, you can have audio in the more robust area and video in the less robust area. So if the signal fades, you can still hear the voices, like analog. Maybe we did some good things back then. So a little bit about the single frequency networks. I think this is a big one. So it can work with high power and low power. And I think that's actually a really interesting thing about the ATSC 3.0 system in general. It can work in a low tower topography. In fact, you can even get to reuse one if you wanted to go that direction. Probably not in this country, but other countries might be interested in that. And then of course, high tower where we live today. And what it lets you do is extend your coverage into shadow areas. I was talking with some folks from San Francisco, and they have determined that if you have one other transmitter in San Francisco, knowing the topography there, you can get a 40% increase in the audience that you reach, just by getting into those shadow areas that San Francisco is famous for. Definitely allows mobile, very key piece, although you can do mobile without a single frequency network. And it does increase your robustness or your capacity, depending on where you want to trade those two things off, what you want your balance to be. So mobile, this is fascinating. This actually, going back here, this is the route between the Olympic Village and the hockey arena in Pyeongchang in Korea. And on the left is the Happy Bus. They might even have called it the Happy Bus. We were on a tour in Korea, and it was the Happy Bus. So anyway, inside the Happy Bus, there was a big TV screen there that you can sort of see in the edge, and then they had a bunch of tablets that people who walk around with, and they had beautiful reception going at highway speeds between these two venues with one tower. So they didn't even need an SFN in order to achieve this. Those of you at NAB in 2018 might have seen the self-driving vehicle as well as the display in the lobby. And in this case, again, we had ATSC 3. We were riding around. This was kind of funny because we were going really low speed, kind of around the south, what was it, between South and Central Hall or something like that. And so you might look at that and say, well, that's kind of pedestrian speeds that we're going here, which is actually kind of hard to do. But I was working with LG at that time, and we were doing a demonstration as well, private car, driving around. And of course, when you're doing a demo and you got somebody in the back seat, they may suggest some things like, hey, let's drive in the parking garage and see what happens. And we're going, uh-oh. And it was great, no problem. The antenna it was a little magnetic antenna on top of the car, beautiful reception, never flinched in the parking garage. So we were, phew, okay. So this one is interesting. Again, kind of I mean, for us in this room, this is huge. I like to show the protocol stack for people who aren't technologists, and they look at it with glazed over eyes, and I say, we love protocol stacks, we really do. And for those of you in the standards industry, the thing that you might find the most interesting about this picture is we know how much we like to discuss controversial decisions. They can sometimes take years to sort out. So which audio system do you want to use? Oh my God. And wow, that was interesting. But with the IP, I think Dr. Chernock, who was chairing the transport team at the time, he said, so we're thinking IP. Any objections? Okay then, moving on. IP it was. And this is state of the art. There is no other terrestrial broadcast system in the world that is based on IP. And this is going to open huge doors for us, not just in the television world, but in all kinds of other areas. We now have a nationwide wireless giant data delivery pipe. What can we do with that? We can do television and a lot more. So this is one of the most important things that's going to help bring value to the spectrum and bring new things to in B2B world as well as B2C world. Security, another one. So, okay, let's say that some very large sports network wants to start emitting content in 4K, and they say we're willing to do 4K, but it better be secure. So how are we going to do this? First of all, studio to transmitter link, making sure that your signal does not get sniped between the studio and I think we have a bad actor in the room somewhere. Between the studio and the transmitter, that's one piece. Another piece is the signed signaling tables and the signed applications. This allows the receiver to authenticate the source of the signal to make sure that nobody has sort of overwhelmed a signal and is transmitting wardrobe malfunctions or whatever over your signal. But perhaps one of the most important ones is the content encryption. It's based on common encryption, which is used for the internet, so for streaming services. And it's based, the first product for this system is going to be Google Widevine, which has been adjusted to allow for those TVs that are not connected to the internet. And certainly it will protect our content, make sure that there's no unauthorized redistribution, and it will also potentially allow broadcasters to do some new things such as subscription, pay-per-view, or quote-unquote freemium services where you maybe it's free but you have to register, or something like that. These are all possible. Whether we actually do these things or not, we don't know, but the most important thing was to protect the content and make sure that unauthorized redistribution was not going to be possible. So video, I'll just kind of fly through this. You guys are familiar with this. 4K, spatial scalability, high frame rate, high dynamic range, wide color gamut. One thing that I will dwell on this in the next slide with respect to audio, coding efficiency, dialogue enhancement, usable selectable audio, all these things. So here we have a little bit of history. 2018, as Lynn said, the standard was declared done at CES in January. By the fall, the major networks, all the CEOs were lined up at NAB New York saying, we're doing this. By the spring, April, NAB 2019, the broadcasters said 60 markets, and then it was up to the TV makers. And we didn't know what was going to happen until the day before the show. And lo and behold, the TV makers announced 20 models for 2020. Wow, very exciting. But these two slides, I look to the broadcasters and the folks in the production area, because here the television manufacturers have stepped up to the plate and said 20 models, we're going to sell these things. This needs to be on the air, and it needs to be good. It needs to be better than ATSC 1.0. Otherwise, the early adopters who buy these beautiful TVs, make sure they're in a market, get 3.0, and look at 720p or 1080i, and they'll ask themselves, why did I do this? So, hugely important for this group. Please make beautiful content that consumers can see the difference. Very, very important. Interactivity. So this is not going to spend too much time on this. I think the most important thing about this is that it's based on standard web technologies, W3C technology, HTML5, JavaScript, CSS. Broadcasters, digital departments already know how to do this. So very important for this, and I think that the CES and the ATSC booths, a framework was demonstrated to help sort of normalize the navigation so that it's easy for consumers switching from channel to channel. And my apologies for anybody who's an A-Warn for this old slide. We have new user interfaces that we're working on for the advanced emergency information, but nonetheless, delivering rich media, video, web pages, et cetera, being able to target emergency messages by geographic region, assuming that the receiver knows more or less where it is, and most important, the ability to update or recall a message for any reason. So the advanced emergency information is also going to be quite key. But now, this is just one little slide, but it might be one of the biggest slides. So data casting is a service. Like I say, we have this nice big IP data delivery pipe, which is beautiful for one-to-many use cases where the downlink needs a lot of data and the uplink could be small data sent over a different network. So what kind of use cases might we have? We've got Internet of Things, software updates to traffic equipment, firmware updates to cars, map updates, media services, connected cars, agriculture, blah, 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 blah. But thinking about the broadcast data delivery network as akin to any other data delivery network, whether it be Wi-Fi or whether it be cellular or anything like that. And in some ways, the broadcasters for certain use cases have the sweet spot. If the use case is for a large amount of data going to a lot of devices, all the same data, then this might be the very best way to do that. So you think about Avis, which is a partner in the Phoenix model market. And they're very interested because whenever somebody does a recall on one of the cars that's in their fleet, somebody has to walk around with a USB stick to the entire fleet and update this car. And they think to themselves, wow, I could do this? Now, they can do it over the cellular network, but it's pretty expensive. So anyway, things to think about. It is about television and more. So that's kind of trying to set the stage for the rest of the program, which is fantastic. What an unbelievable lineup! And I will turn the mic over to Pete. Thank you.
Peter, got a couple minutes. If anybody has any questions, did anybody go to CES? Yeah. You want to talk about what you saw? We got a microphone over there. Let's pass it down. Yeah, these are wireless.
Hello.
Got it.
Hi, I'm Carl Paulson. I'm the CTO of Diversified and was fortunate enough to get to CES this year. Was outstandingly impressed with the booth that they had there. We spent 3 or 4 hours there probably total over a day and a half period. I also was amazed to see that while at the press parts of the conference that there was little to no mention of NextGen TV or ATSC 3.0, and I hope that that changes as the CTA goes on forward in the forward motion. We did get a chance to see about half of the sets that were shown. Some of them were actually demonstrating the receiving capabilities. We saw in some private rooms how they were adapting the various types of formats from an audio perspective and from a video and interactive perspective. So very impressive, good showing. Was there at the announcement for the logo, so which I proudly wear. It was a good time.
Great, thank you, Carl. And just to tack on to that, we had so much fun at CES that while we were there, we inked a contract to exhibit there again next year. So thank you, Brian, and to CTA for allowing us to do this. We're going to have a slightly larger booth again in the Central Hall, and we're hoping for some really good stories to be telling from all the cool stuff that happens in 2020.
Thank you, Madeline.